Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In the studio with us right now is Joe Scafino from Salisbury. Thank you. Michael Langford from Salisbury. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
So you both were at the Salisbury City Council meeting, and I want to talk about the two main subjects that came up last night. One, we saw the appointment of Melissa Holland. She was sworn in to take Deshaun Dowdy's spot. Right. But also we had a lot of folks at the meeting about Keontae Bratton and his engagement with the Salisbury City Police. And we want to talk about those public comments as well. Joe, I know you have experience with being on government. You've been elected to councils before. I want to bring in Dr. Joe Venosa because he was at the meeting as well. And I want to get a sense for what he saw, but then I want to bring you back in and get a little analysis of what you would have liked to have seen from your experience actually serving.
Yep.
All right. Michael, is that good with you?
Sounds great.
All right. So stay with us. When we come back, we're going to bring in Dr. Joe Venosa. We're going to talk about the Salisbury City Council meeting from December 8th. Welcome back to Open Agenda. In the studio with us now is Dr. Joe Venosa. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Michael Langford, thanks for sticking around. So, gentlemen, the point of the show was to talk about the appointment of Melissa Holland to the Salisbury City Council, and that was a major topic yesterday. A little bit later on, I want to get on to the Keontae Bratton incident with the Salisbury Police, but first let's start with the Salisbury City Council. As we suspected, she was sworn in, and then immediately went to a president vote. And this did turn into a vote to have Angela Blake as the president of the Salisbury City Council. Any shock there?
For council president now open?
Yes. Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to nominate Councilwoman Jackson for the president, please.
Okay, so we have one nomination.
I'd like to nominate Angela Blake.
Yeah, are there any votes for the second nominee, Ms. Blake?
Aye.
Seeing three votes, I will now turn the meeting over to now Mrs. Blake, the new president.
No, it's what we unfortunately expected. I wish they had proved us wrong, but I mean, quid pro quo kind of situation. They both fought for her to be there, so then she fought for her to be there.
Yeah.
It's a great way to put it.
Well, okay. And then it was a little surprising to see April Jackson unanimously as vice president, but was that just an effort to change the optics?
Actually, that was the least surprising thing.
Oh, it was? Okay.
For me, because of essentially three reasons. One is this. There's no way that Michelle Gregory would ever have the work ethic, in my humble opinion, to be vice president.
Okay.
She doesn't even respond to constituent emails from everyone that I've spoken with in that district, much less show up to meetings consistently. So she wasn't going to be an option. Sharon DeShiel has said repeatedly that she would not serve as vice president if it was under that faction of the city government, I think for obvious reasons. And so I think in Angela Blake's and Michelle Gregory's kind of short progress-minded approach to symbolic virtue signaling, I think they thought, we'll give April this position as a kind of second place, prize. That way they can't say that we don't, value her. And if you watch the video, don't take my word for it. If you watch the video of when that vote takes place, I would look at Miss Jackson's body language and response, because I think she viewed it in some ways as kind of an insult. That's my thought. There's
also the aspect of, if you watch the video, the way in which it occurred, when they got to the vice presidential, before Angela could finish the process of the words that you say to open to nominations for who would be vice president, Melissa Holland nervously cuts her off short and suggests April.
The following rules will be adhered to in the election of the new council vice president.
Council President, I vote to nominate April Jackson for Vice President.
Hold on, we gotta go through the whole.
Okay, I'm going to go through the rules.
Okay, sorry.
I'm going to go through the rules first.
Okay.
So you know that there's and this is a person who.
What experience would Melissa Holland have at that point that April Jackson should be vice president?
Exactly. Why would she be the one to propose it?
Okay.
And so when you see that lockstep with them putting Angela there, and then you see that, it's very scripted.
All right. So the crux of this issue is the fact that 4 people, and only 4 people in the city of Salisbury, selected a representative from a district that none of the 4 people live in or represent. Mm-hmm. And this process was in a closed session, which I think City of Salisbury has proven that's a key component to their legislative governance. good or bad, and you've cut through a lot of that yourself, Michael, with your investigations. But at the end of the day, this issue of a tie, because that's what started this. When we had a tie between selecting Jermichael Mitchell and Melissa Holland, there was no way to break the tie.
There has to be a procedure to break a tie. I think the charter needs to be addressed so that in the event of a tie, who else but the mayor, another elected official, to make that decision?
There's a structural issue there, obviously, and we have talked about it, and other people during public comments alluded to it.
Yeah, everybody in here, by a show of hands, who thinks this charter needs to be changed? Hey, Council President, put it on your agenda. Now, if it doesn't get on the agenda the next 2 years, we know why. Now, another thing we also might want to see on that agenda or put on there also within the next 2 years is if you have to fill a council vacancy and it's more than a year, how about special election?
Right?
It don't take much.
But I'm also concerned about the fact that even before you get to the tie, there's some real concerns from what we've discovered, especially if you listen to Miss Natalie St. Fard's comments, that people were blocked from even from having their application fully examined.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Natalie St. Fard, and I'm a District 2 resident, and I'm here to talk about some things that matter to me. Last week, I was cut out of the District 2 vacancy process. The explanations that I received made little to no sense. So I've submitted a Maryland Public Information Act request to get some answers. And I'll be honest, the more that I learn, the harder it is not to see the patterns. I've heard about multiple candidates disqualified based on alleged residency requirements. When that happens over and over again, it starts to look less like a coincidence and more like a convenient tool to block new voices, new ideas, and new energy from entering a system that desperately needs fresh and innovative ideas.
Because hers was actually deemed not eligible, right?
Disqualified, I think would be the word, right? She was
Okay.
disqualified so that she didn't get to the interview stage of the process.
Okay.
So she applied but was disqualified, therefore could not interview.
And yet, again, at least from what she and other council members have said, at least 2 council members, she provided all the required documentation. I find it kind of disheartening that you have people who are well known in the community, to paraphrase somebody, boots on the ground, much like Jermichael Mitchell, and they don't even get an interview?
Yeah, I mean, so my experience with all of the candidates, most of it has to do with Jermichael Mitchell, and he exemplifies boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Politically, Jermichael and I may not even agree on a lot of things, especially nationally.
Yeah.
But if you want to ask someone what belongs in their neighborhood, he is the neighborhood, and for a lot of kids, I mean, whether it's a baseball camp or the summer basketball league, and he runs that for boys and girls, and everything is out there for people to participate.
Also, he has worked for the city before, and he works for the county.
Yeah.
So he also works in local government. So we put Melissa Holland because of basically secretarial experience.
From years ago.
All right, so my name is Jermichael Mitchell. I think the thought process for me is when you're always told to trust the process. And you're always told showing up, after a while, people will get it and understand. We will be putting in a Public Information Act request to see the rubric of what and how applicants were judged, the notes from the process, and also text messages from said director who we believe was involved in some conversations, and also from the council. We think that it needs to be a fair process, and I truly believe myself that the process wasn't fair. Nothing against Ms. Holland at all. I don't know her, I can't speak against her or anything that she has done in this community, and congratulations on winning the vote of the council. But we truly believe in people having a fair say in the process. And when you say that, having people who don't live in our district speaking for our district and making decisions for our district when we never see them in our district is very difficult to accept. So again, as it said before, the process is flawed. When you have people who don't live in that district making decisions for that district, it needs to be a special election vote of some sort where the people have a say, because the people know who they see, boots on the ground.
ago.
Right, from years ago. But even so, it's just like this is not a person who's an executive. This is not a person with any kind of legal or financial responsibilities in that role. So now you're stepping into the legislative body, of a governing city when you have no experience, whereas Jermichael, again, serves on governing boards. So it's like, again, this person is like overqualified, honestly, for the position, and clearly, again, boots on the ground, kind of has both the visibility you want a public official as well as the qualifications.
And hearing that both Ms. St. Fard's application wasn't even allowed to run its course and have an interview, and then hearing from what we now know that Michelle Gregory and Andrew Blake specifically tried to block Jermichael's interview from even happening, is really disturbing to me, right? Because it's the opposite of what a city government should provide to its citizens, which is basic transparency and an open forum. And we heard from many people who at least said, okay, we'll accept once again that this is the third time there has been, in a lot of people's eyes, a kind of predetermined decision to who to appoint. Can we at least amend the charter? And I'm going to say this right now, I don't think that's going to happen with this council.
Well, and that's one of my fears when you're dealing with a group like Shore Progress. They speak about inclusion, and then they don't follow with inclusion.
No.
And Jermichael's point has been that this, I mean, and he has stated, he's prefaced this, that he does not use this term loosely, but he has said this was a racist event from folks who claim to support that inclusiveness.
And
right?
I find it interesting that one of the members affiliated with Shore Progress made a very long post about the city council meeting last night, largely using an AI-generated program. Now, this person wasn't at the meeting. They weren't there.
Always key.
But they never alluded to the fact that most of the community felt that they were not being heard. They also never alluded to the fact or seemed to support a change in the charter for this appointment process, or at least from what I could tell, it was minimally referenced. And so I think, again, there is a political game that some people in certain community groups play, and then there's the actual community.
Yeah. Well, so we're interested to see, does the fact that Melissa Holland has a business tie with a developer, Gillis Gilkerson, one that we've talked about on this show, with Deshaun Dowdy and his involvement with developers, is this going to play a role in future city policy?
I did some investigating that I don't know if council did on Ms. Holland. If you look up court records, you're going to see, like Mr. Dowdy, who was replaced, there's a long list of liens and judgments against them, but according to the records, there's even an open one still. I also found that the house that she rents is from the Gilkerson developer. So any votes involving that developer, I believe she should abstain from.
And Michael, you've talked about this when they've talked about annexing property, developers' ability to have developer rights versus subsidies. And will this now, is the deck still just stacked 3-2 against?
To some extent, I'll say it is actually really encouraging to have the current mayor we have. So if you look at the new Chick-fil-A being built off of South Boulevard, the city announced yesterday or the day before that they were closing down part of Monticello for improvements to like the sewer system. Yeah, Chick-fil-A is paying for that. Okay. That's how it's supposed to go. I've been saying the whole time that these businesses, if they want to do business and there's something that they need in order to accomplish that, that's traditionally,
they don't need the $4 million check before they start.
Correct. They do not need state money to get this work done. So now the people on Monticello also get that benefit.
Okay, so I'm not a Chick-fil-A fast food fan, but
sure.
I will thank the franchisee for that, as opposed to Mentis Capital.
Who's not getting a handout. Who's got parking lot 10 closed down.
Correct. So Chick-fil-A is stepping up for Salisbury, but a luxury developer is not.
All right, so I want to also cover a lot of the public speaking was about Keontae Bratton, right? Now, we don't know all the details, but there are some details we know. We know that there was an interaction with the Salisbury City Police that at the very least deserves more scrutiny, right?
Right.
A lot of the folks who did speak yesterday weren't calling for pitchforks and torches.
No.
What were they asking for?
I think people want to see more accountability, and I think people are very just across the board in our society, from the top down, sick of seeing rules for thee, not for me. And so when we see like police speeding around town and pulling over certain people, and that interaction, I mean, he's completely right. Like there were like 5, 6 cop cars pulling over one individual who has 2 minors in the car. Like this person, when he's talking in the beginning, he's not screaming, he's not insulting them. He's yes sir, no sir, very polite, professional. But yeah, by the time, so I think that there's an aspect of just the accountability and a procedure. His father called for like gentleman's father has worked in corrections, I believe, for a very long time and is a veteran, and he spoke to the need for chain of command to be followed, and that accountability for whoever's up top should be pulling these people aside. If they step out of line, he's like that happens. Yeah. People step outside their role. There needs to be someone there that can step them aside and say, hey, this isn't how we do it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Horace Bratton Jr. I'm the father of Keontae Bratton, but I'm going to say something that I believe is the most important of it all. You know, I've served this great country, the United States Army. I've worked corrections. I'm doing security for 40 years, still doing it now. The main thing that I want to touch base on is I've witnessed 3 or 4 of these traffic stops with my son. Now it's trickling down to my grandkids. The thing is that I want to say to the city of Salisbury, I mean, believe me, I got police officer friends in the system. I grew up with them. You know, I know a lot of them, and they're not all, you know, bad officers. A lot of them are damn good officers. The main thing that concerns me in this situation, the main thing, is when you have 4 to 5 officers there on the scene and no one takes the authority and pulls the others to the side and say, this is wrong.
Well, and he wasn't asking. He was asking just for law and order to be followed, right? I mean,
correct.
It was conducted in a way that said, hey, look, this may be one bad apple, but we need to hold that accountable.
And my understanding is that there, you know, part of it is that there are several charges beyond the beyond the failure to stop at a stop sign, I believe, is the initial reason that Mr. Bratton was pulled over. He has more charges than just that, which is not actually just or fair, because he got pulled over and the situation escalated.
And I think that came out a lot in the different testimony, and this is my thought of it. And again, we got to be honest, right, in terms of the fact that, you know, people in the African American community generally have a very different experience and a different perception of certain aspects of law enforcement. That's just a historic thing, and it certainly came through in the meeting last night. But one of the things that I heard from most of the people in the audience and that spoke is that they want good policing. They want the policing to be good and to reflect the community and to be accountable. And when that is not delivered, and especially from somebody in the community who's very well known, very well liked, and who has 2 kids, and who has just buried his wife, I think this is something that also people, the idea that you lose someone who you love, and then you go through that with your kids. I don't think people really understand too, regardless of, you know, how you're supposed to talk or not talk to authorities in certain situations, the human element is a factor here.
Yeah, it's a fight or flight.
It's a fight or flight thing. Human beings, you know, we operate at certain...
Especially when you have your kids in the car.
Yeah,
absolutely.
When it comes to people and their children, don't come between them.
Here's what I want to bring in Joe Scafino back in. And I want to ask Joe what because he was at the meeting last night and he actually spoke as well. I want to see, what is the public looking for the next steps to be? Because it's one thing to go to a meeting and air your displeasure, but what are the solutions to this? Okay. Yeah. All right. So stay with us. When we come back, we're going to bring back in Joe Scafino and we're going to ask him about what's the next steps for the Salisbury City Council. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. Back in the studio with us is Joe Scafino from Salisbury. Thank you, Joe. Michael Langford, thanks for sticking around. So we had a chance to talk with Dr. Venosa about what was said at the meeting. And Joe, we've talked about it many times on the show. You have experience up in Percy, Pennsylvania as a township council person. Right. So you have experience. One of the common elements here is we're talking about this lack of transparency for appointments, and it's been brought up. I mean, Michelle Gregory, Angela Blake, and now Melissa Holland, along with Deshaun Dowdy, they were all appointed to their position initially. And we're talking about some of the coverage from Shore Progress, like Megan Alton. She was also appointed a couple years ago. If we're worried about the transparency of the process, and we're worried about, Michael, whether someone is boots on the ground or they just a figurehead for a district or a community, are we going down a path that we're solving this for the city at large?
No. Like a lot of people said, if there's more than 100 days, there should be a special election. At the very least, we have to change the charter to break a tie.
Yes.
All right. And thirdly, in my experience, when we had on a rare occasion we had to appoint someone. I served 8 years, so I think we only had one or two appointments. But every candidate sat in public. It was not a closed session. The public heard every candidate respond to the same questions, and then we voted.
Member of the Salisbury community, I want to express my strong belief in the foundational importance of transparency in our local election processes, particularly following the recent vacancy appointment. It appears that many in the community were disappointed that the procedures used to fill the recent vacancy on the city council lack the public scrutiny and openness that builds community trust. When interviews are conducted entirely in closed session and the decision feels removed from the direct district voter input, it raises questions about accountability and public access.
Well, so Michael, you at one time put your name in the hat to run for city council, and you have always been an open book, which I always commend you about. I mean, the good and the bad, mostly good, but but if someone is not willing to follow through with that public scrutiny, how are they ever going to hold up in an election?
Yeah, I think that's what's key is, like, long as people are willing, you don't have any right to lead if you're not willing to, like, submit to the system. You know what I mean? You don't have any right to be in those seats if you're not following through with that process.
So when, and I know that they found a loophole that wouldn't allow you to run, but when you see Natalie St. Fard and she talks about how she was disqualified, but yet we don't really understand why, and she never went through the interview process. So I mean, explain that. Like, what's that disconnect there?
So this is what's so odd to me is, I mean, sometimes there's just been a lack of a process.
Okay.
So what happened in my 2023 when I thought I was going to be able to run was I went to them and I asked them if I qualified. I let them know, hey, I had lived outside the district in less than a year. The city clerk at the time and the president of the Board of Elections, Harry Basehart, said I could run, so I filed. Somebody contested that, and they overturned it. At the end of the day, I dropped it. I submitted to the system of, fine, I didn't agree with the process and how it went. Then that is actually what I have come to understand is when I put in a PIA for who filed the complaint, it was a verbal complaint. They never wrote it down.
So we'll never know.
Well, yeah, and that shouldn't be happening. There wasn't a process. That is why they created the form that I ended up filling out against Deshaun.
Okay.
For there to be an official filing of a complaint, so a written complaint would be taken because it was so underhanded what happened to me.
So in an instance, even when you don't agree with the rules, you learn how to adapt and follow the rules. And this goes back to what Joe's saying. There is no process here.
Regardless of what happens, I believe that we have to make an amendment to the city charter so that in the future there has to be a special election to replace any council member. There have been 3, in my opinion, very flawed replacement processes over the last 3 years. I myself, when I applied for a replacement for District 3 2 years ago, distinctly remember sitting in that hallway during the process, and a friend who worked for the city at the time came by, this is before I interviewed, and said, "Good luck, Joe, but unfortunately the council has already chosen Megan Alton." Why? Because her friends were on the council. I think that is a very flawed process. The issue here is that I believe, and based on what I've heard and seen as well, one candidate was not even allowed the process of interviewing formally, even though she submitted all the correct paperwork and can't be given a straight answer. And Mr. Mitchell, is my understanding, there was an attempt to even preempt his very interview. I find that deeply distressing.
So is there going to be leadership? When you look at, you now have 3/5 of the city council who has at least got their initial foot in the door through appointment, not through election, haven't had to bear all. And then they're also the ones who are making the decision to keep this a closed process, keep this away from the public. Are you ever going to build any type of continuity of government or even some confidence in your government?
I'm pretty confident in 2 years Salisbury is going to do just that.
Okay.
I think Michelle Gregory and Angela Blake signed the end of their political career last night.
All over just Angela Blake getting to be president of the city council for a couple of years.
Yeah, and I want to add something.
Well,
again,
the unfair process of the appointment of Melissa Holland. I think people are really tired of these technical excuses.
Yeah.
And I want to add something. If I were Melissa Holland, I would be angry right now, realizing that I was used as a tool by Councilwomen Blake and Gregory to prevent Jermichael Mitchell from getting a seat that he was far more qualified for and deserving and knew the community.
Well, and that's one thing on this show. We haven't attacked Melissa Holland. We don't know enough about her, but we do know enough about Jermichael Mitchell to understand that process, at the very least, if that's not who you're going to come up with, show us your work.
Exactly.
What led you to believe that this Melissa Holland lady must be wonderful? I mean, because if she can beat someone who runs basketball programs and baseball programs, this isn't about politics. Because, like I said before, Jermichael and I politically don't necessarily align on the national issues, but he's in his community. He's serving his folks, right?
And to your point, this is another example of the cowardice and gutlessness of Gregory and Blake. And I'm going to go back to the charter amendment, changing the code from 40 units to 80 units. They voted for it despite the infrastructure and development, their own employees saying there's a problem, we need to step back, and they voted against their employees, and they didn't have the guts to say why. What did they disagree with? And that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what's unfair. There wasn't a rationale given to Natalie. I think that by the end of the request, I hope that she gets a more satisfactory answer than I ever got. But basically what it came down to was the people that I spoke to, I was like, so either you guys are deliberately doing this or you're incompetent, and the person copped to being incompetent and not knowing. And I think with Natalie, exactly what you said, it's cowardice to deny Jermichael the ability to serve. It's cowardly to deny Natalie the ability to interview to serve and not give them a reason. And you're right there. And so they'll run out the clock on this stuff. If you put in a request, they'll run out to the very last amount of the legal amount of time, when really you could just walk down the hall, get the information, send it back to the person, and let transparency in government and be the case.
I want to end this with there's a potential one silver lining here, and it's not going to give us a lot of solace for the next 18 months to 2 years, but this is potentially going to get more people involved, and we've seen this with the county government. As our county executive has used some backroom maneuvers to circumvent MOUs and appointments, so too as the Salisbury City Council. And the one thing we've seen is an increase in participation at the Salisbury City Government and the Wicomico County Council at their meetings. So I think what people need to understand is this is not a one meeting solution.
Yeah.
But the solutions are within sight. I mean, 2 years seems like a long time, but it'll go by.
The county is going to be next year, so one domino at a time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks for watching this episode of Open Agenda. We'll be back later this week with another new episode. He's not Dr. Joe Scafino.
Right.
I only have a master's.